What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Scream Season 1, MTV Scream. I finally watched it for the first time. I have an interesting journey to the show. I remember back in the day when it was coming out, I was interested in it, and I know I watched the first episode, and I know I watched some sort of recap slash like kill montage slash something on the show, because I did remember certain sections of it. But in terms of watching the entire thing, and actually, a good thing I have a bad memory, I guess, because I actually forgot a good amount, and even some of the deaths and some of the twists completely, shocked me because it was almost like seeing it for the first time. So I want to review it. I want to talk about my opinion on it because obviously I think it was a hot topic when it came out. Maybe not so much anymore, but I think it's a pretty interesting show. Let me just say, to kind of start it out, I actually really did like it. I'm in the middle right now. I actually have like 4 episodes left of season 2 when you guys are listening to the video, so maybe in a couple days or even one day I'll be done with that and we can talk about season 2. There's a lot of problems there, but season 1 really, I think, does a lot of stuff right in terms of characters, and I want to talk about the general positives and negatives. Let me start with one negative, and the biggest one, because I actually think this is maybe not the only one, but easily the biggest negative I think of the whole show. It's not really Scream. That's the biggest, and I know that. I mean, I knew that going in, right? But like, the show's actually really good, but I think they could have done it if they, and I think like I messaged somebody about this, like Lakewood Horror, Lakewood something. If you just call it Lake, or even, come up with your own name, that's completely fine. My names probably suck. But if you just made a different name, and I guess even maybe if you did have the killer wear that mask, it's not close enough to Ghostface where, I mean, it is, like, it resembles it. But, I think you could have done this entire show and not had it been related to Scream whatsoever. There is the meta stuff there with Noah, who, by the way, is a phenomenal character. Really. I think they kind of learned the lessons of Randy, and they were like, we're going to do it just as good, but we're gonna like keep him around, we're gonna give him character, like all that stuff. I really like that. So I mean, I get it, there is a lot of stuff that does make this Scream. The voice does I would say a pretty darn good job. I mean, it's definitely not as good as Roger L. Jackson, but the more you hear it, I feel like the more it gets better, and I just feel like the characters kind of jive with it, and he jives with them, and it kind of all works out. But I really just think you didn't really need to make it Scream. Besides the voice, besides the mask, I wouldn't even say the killer itself, right? Because that really has no relation. The mask, the voice, and the fact that it is, I guess, a little meta. And I guess the whodunit aspect of it, but that is not a Scream specific thing, right? That's many different things just in general. It's not really Scream. So that's, in my opinion, the biggest and really maybe the only major, flaw or weakness I have of the entire show. I think it does. Now, on the flip side, if you want to connect it to Scream, I think it does the best job at something that I've talked about a little bit in some of the Scream videos, not necessarily Scream 5, but other videos I made on the channel where, one of the complaints I do have of the Scream movies that I do think they do okay, and granted, I know you can't do it all that much because as a movie, it's limited time. You can't really show the ramifications of these deaths, or what characters go through because of these deaths. You can't do that. Randy was kind of one of the most missed opportunities, where when he died, I liked what they did with Sydney. I liked even what they did with Sydney in 3 in regards to Randy, but that was kind of it. Nobody ever felt. Tatum is like one of the most glaring things where it's like, I mean, she was his sister, Dewey's sister, right? I don't care how maybe apart they were, and obviously age they were a little apart, but it's like she was your sister, and the movies have made no effort to ever like have him reminisce about her whatsoever. So I think those are big missed opportunities that just kind of give more character to these characters, right? In the show, because it's such a longer time, you spend so much more time. In fact, you spend more time with Emma than any of the characters probably combined. Actually, yeah, they combined in all of the Scream movies. And for that, you get to experience, what they go through so much more. So I think they do, in my opinion, a really good job with that. With, when a character dies, whether they're friends with one person or like a group of people, there's like fallout from it, and I love that. And I guess that's what maybe television is more about, right? There's fallout from it, and you can tell that these characters knew each other, that they're going through something. And then specifically with Emma, right, she goes through a lot more than just that in the show. Develops like a kind of a PTSD thing, but she has all of these problems, and like you can see that affecting her and affecting the relationship with her friends, of maybe even like caring about her more because of it. Like, you see that, and you don't get that as much from, really, not just Scream, like most movies, because you don't have as much time. You know what I mean? That's just like a thing. You don't have as much time with the characters. And that is a shining thing. I would say that's a really big positive of the show. Emma is phenomenal. Like, I'm really, really happy with her character. I think she's perfect. I think, I'd even like a way to kind of introduce her into movies, or just kind of give her more. That's actually, again, going into like Scream 2 or season 2, a lot more issues I have, because they kind of take the screen away from her a little bit more in season 2, and it's like she's your best character, I think, by a mile, and we'll probably do a video on that eventually. But she's phenomenal. Noah, again, as I said earlier, like, he's great. He comes across a little weird, I think, at first, but he's consistently good. He consistently brings that Randy vibe, and I don't think it's unfair to just I guess lump him in, but yet again, he actually is a lot more than just a Randy. You know what I mean? He has a big personality. Again, and there's just more you learn about him because you spend so much time with him. Kieran is awesome. Like, he's definitely that red herring. There's actually several red herrings right throughout all of season 1. Jake, when it comes to like Jake and Will, they're like, I would say, a step down from the main cast. Brooke, I think, is really, really good. She, I think, took the longest to grow on me, but also I think that's just generally how her character is, because her character, I do think, gets better and gets less maybe one-dimensional, that I think they wrote on purpose, right? Because she's more about her. She's she's like the pretty girl at school, all that stuff, mayor's daughter. But I think as she grows into her character, we grow to like her a little bit more. I think that really shows even in like season 2, I think, a lot more. So the characters are definitely the standout. The phone calls are pretty good. I like some of the throwbacks when she calls, or Emma calls, the alarm company, and that ends up being this killer, and they say like, you look sad, and she said, what? And you sound sad. Obviously a throwback to Casey Becker. Even the ending with the landline ringing, and then Jake says like, what is this, 1996? So there's cool moments. The ending, so I guess one of the biggest things, obviously, to talk about, right, is the revealing of Piper as the killer. She was on my short list. I had a short list of like 2 or 3 characters. Obviously, it doesn't make... Well, here's the thing. Let's just break it down, right? So when the killer interrupts Will and her, and she gets injured, no joke, I forgot that happened. Like, it happened, and like the episode after, I kind of remembered, but I was watching them all literally I watched them in a span of maybe 30, 40 hours. So I kind of forgot that scene played out. So I really did suspect Piper, maybe more than the average person, because it's like, well, the killer was right there and she was on the ground, and if there's only one, it can't be her. But I kind of forgot about that, so I was like, well, Piper seems pretty suspicious, and she kind of does throughout the entire thing. So then when it was her, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I kind of forgot, and then I was like, oh, well, 2 killers, yada, yada, and obviously that goes into season 2. But I thought that was cool. I like the Brandon James stuff in the background. I think season 1 does a really solid job of keeping everybody kind of up to speed. They're making semi-good decisions throughout the entire thing. They're not all idiots, and they all, like, I guess I just said it, but like, when they all talk to each other, that's important, because like season 2, I think, is the opposite, where it's like, if they just talk to each other and kind of like fill in the gaps that other people don't know, or then they fill in your gaps of what you don't know, or a lot of the stuff wouldn't actually happen. And then it becomes more like, well, certain things are just kind of happening to happen, and like the killer, like they would never be able to fully predict like all of the sequences would happen in the right order or exactly the way that they want it to play out. You know what I mean? It gets a lot more messy the longer it goes. So I think for season 1 being 10 episodes, being more of a, again, I guess it does go a little bit better into Scream. Like the bowling alley episode is really, really good. They focus on, obviously you have to focus on characters and developing them and getting to know them, but you also have that mystery of Brandon James, and it's kind of just like a singular investigation. It's like a singular thing that they're trying to figure out. They only think it's one killer, like, what I mean? All of that stuff. And it kind of simplifies it, and that's good. You want it to be a little bit simpler, because that's how these things tend to work out best. So I think season 1 does a much, and maybe you don't even realize it as you're watching it, but it does a much, much better job of that versus season 2. Much better job. I mean, season 2 kind of loses its way quite a bit, but I really liked it. I think the kills were good. I don't really care too much about I like chase sequences. I like cat and mouse things. So I did like, specifically, I would say, Emma's phone call in her house, again, when she thinks it's the security, officer for the security alarm. That was probably one of the better scenes in the entire season, just because it wasn't exactly cat and mouse, but it kind of was, and I think they played that off really well. And there were a couple other phone calls. I was waiting for the hello Emma instead of hello Sydney, and I liked it, when we got it, and that happened a couple of times. I think it kind of loses its how special it is once it happens like 4 or 5 times, and that's another thing. I think Season 1, there'd sometimes be episodes, and I can't remember for sure, but it would feel like, at least, right? There'd be episodes where, like, there'd be no phone call, there'd be no kills, and it's like, I get it, because it's a TV show, you have to slow it down sometimes in order to get through, all the episodes, but, again, for, like, the movie, you only have a certain amount of time, and again, I think it's hard for the show, because when you have it play out, right, these events, like in the movies, they happen so quick. Like, it's a day or two, maybe 3 days, right? And, like, that's it. So there's very limited time to place everything and figure everything out, and everything's happening so quickly, and characters are all over the place. But, like, for the show, these characters are constantly talking to each other. They're constantly doing things with each other. It's happening over, like, weeks at a time, you know what I mean? And so again, like when phone calls happen or when kills happen, like they're spaced out. They're way more spaced out. And again, I think that can kind of backfire. And I think Season 1 did a relatively good job of keeping things under control, especially with it being Piper. And, she's not like the most obvious choice to have been the killer, you know what I mean, when watching it. So it kind of makes sense, and it kind of makes sense of her kind of just hanging out around there. And again, I would say even the negatives of that, of trying to stretch it out, and maybe stretching it out comes across as a negative. It probably is, but I think that just does allow better character development. If you didn't have it stretched out, then you wouldn't be able to have the good characters. And again, I really think the biggest strength, I would argue, really is Emma. She's a great main character. She shows more emotion and, again, like a response just from things that happen, in her life, then probably, I think Sydney's still, one of, if not the best characters in the franchise of Scream. But, like, in terms of being a quote-unquote final girl or a lead in this show or a lead in any Scream property, like, Emma does phenomenal, because she just kind of brings something that's completely different, or just more than probably any other character. And again, I think that's to the credit of it being a TV show, because you can kind of see that response from her. Whereas, again, like for Sydney, a killer's chasing you, you see Tatum hanging from the garage door, and it's like, well, you don't have, 20 minutes to go through how that's affecting her life. Like, we're in the final act, like, we gotta figure it out. And really, that stuff, you just have to imagine plays out in between the movies. That's just kind of how that happens. But I really enjoyed it. It did not need to be called Scream, but because it is, here we are talking about it. But it really did make me like, this group of characters. There's some really, really good characters, and there are good characters that even when they die, you're like, shoot. And it also makes you root for who's still alive. Now, being a TV show, though, you get into the issue where you have to keep more characters alive than you normally would. For like a movie, once it gets to like the second half, especially, Scream movies, any character, is up for grabs. And as I've said, most times, actually in all 4, maybe like 20% of the cast maximum makes it past the ending, because you just start rattling off all these deaths. It's just rapid fire. You can't do that in a show. So granted, it does make you believe like Noah is more safe than a normal Randy type. Even Emma, like, you cannot kill her. You just can't. Now, maybe, again, I haven't gotten to the ending of Season 2, or I know there's been the rumors for Season 3, but, like, maybe you could kill her in Season 3 in the final thing, but her being the lead, you have a contract, shows, all that stuff. You can't kill her off. So you have that. But, like, that's why Brooke is there, I feel like, right? Because she's a character that you grow to like, and then maybe you could take somebody like that out, or Noah, or Audrey, stuff like that. So that's my opinion of the show. I did really like it. And like I said, depending on how this video does, we can maybe talk about Season 2 and make more videos on the show in general. I know that the Season 2 ends on a cliffhanger. I know Season 3 was up in the air and then canceled, and then there was a Season 3, but it's not really Season 3. So I know all that stuff. Hopefully we get an actual conclusion to their story, though. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure, as always, you guys are subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. If you want to follow me over on Twitter or subscribe to my second channel or support us on Patreon or YouTube memberships, links for all of them are in the description below. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all on the next Scream video.